3, 2, 1. Pick up your microphone. And now we're back.
Microphone is picked up.
And guess what? Everybody's here. We're talking. And we're making jams. Well, see, Kyle's over here trying to add to the conversation, but he's over here trying to make more food.
Sans microphone.
Sans.
He said, for those of you who weren't present in the room, that he was making his way downtown, walking fast.
We were just downtown beating at that beat off fest. Or was it offbeat? Or was it the beat off
Yes, we
fest?
were downtown beating off.
No, it was the music festival in Reno, the beat off festival. No, it's
Offbeat.
offbeat. Yeah, it's offbeat festival. I get my words mixed up. It's crazy.
I feel like that would be even more disturbing than us beating off of like going to a festival like, oh yeah, let's make a spectacle of everyone beating off.
Sounds like a good bukkake. That's what they do in the Asian countries, Japan. They really like that sort of communal jism kind of thing going on.
This is our first 2 minutes. We're going hard in the paint immediately out of the gate.
Well, we've had an interesting night at the Offbeat Festival.
The Beat Off Festival.
Yeah.
We beat off. Is this me?
No, you
Yeah,
have to
you're
hold
on.
it like
It's
right to your
on.
chin. You're like trying to make out with the mic.
Man.
You just have to
Mike.
talk into it. I did all the work for you.
Okay. I'll try.
So I thought, I don't know any of the bands that we saw, but that first band at the
Yeah, no
Saint,
idea.
oh man, that chick had a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she had a voice
She had a
among other
smile.
things.
Ooh, she had a smile. I was looking right at her smile the whole time, that denim smile.
I was going to say, which set of lips were you looking at?
Y'all are gross.
We're products of our environment, which kind of brings us to the topic we were talking about doing today.
Yeah, we're here to discuss socialization.
Oh boy.
It's like how I became me and you became us.
I became we.
Is this the
Pronouns.
Beatles? I am you and you is we and we're all...
A family. Talking about me.
And I felt like it was an appropriate time to pop open a nice mango White Claw. No affiliation.
It's never a nice time for a White Claw.
It's a nice seltzer water.
I
It's a nice
beg to
seltzer.
goddamn differ.
If you have a penis, there is never a
Excuse
time
me,
for a White
are
Claw.
there laws? No, and that's because there's claws. You're welcome.
It's a nice seltzer water.
It tastes like the static from old CRT TVs became a drink.
Yeah, and that drinking White Claw that tastes like static from old tube televisions reminds me of a time when things were simpler.
Are you making fun of water that remembers fruit?
Water that remembers is an interesting thing that a bunch of our hippie friends actually are into.
It's
The
a
memory
big-
of water.
It's a big thing in the native scene. Like water is a spirit, it's alive. Water is life. It remembers.
I can't claim credit for this joke because I heard it on a stand-up recently, but if water does have memory, I've done some things in the shower that water probably needs to forget about.
Dude, animals piss and shit in water all day long.
And I'm animals.
I didn't realize that the basis of all life and John McAfee had so much in common. Because, he'd like to have those prostitutes on that island shit in his mouth.
I didn't know that. I feel like I could have gone the rest of my life without knowing that, but you can't unlearn things once you know them.
They interviewed the prostitutes and we had a hammock that had a hole cut in it, and we would lay under it, and we would just poop in his face, and he would island lady, poop on my face more, please.
More things I can't unlearn.
Yeah. So how do you think a person, John McAfee, he's probably billionaire software developer. He made software security what it is.
Oh, that
How-
McAfee.
How does he become a guy that likes to get his mouth shit on by island prostitutes? Matt, what's that socialization process?
If I had to take a stab at it, and I'm not like a professional sociologist,
We'll
probably
pretend
just
like you are.
the whole thing, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If no one's telling you no, what weird shit would all of us do?
Yeah, if I had so much money that literally I could do whatever I want, and I don't have to worry about jobs anymore, or impressing people, or I used to think that I would go into the porn industry after both my grandfathers died, because they're the only men left that I like actually care. Like my dad and my stepdad like taught me how to be a man, but I don't actually care what they think. Like my grandfathers though, like one of them passed, crazy wild man. I care what he thinks. The other one, he's like really old, but I just can't wait till they pass away so I can like be in a gay porn, like getting fucked in the ass, being like, "Look at me, daddy, I'm a faggot. I'm a faggot, daddy," just to make them proud.
So yeah, that's one thing you can do if no one's saying no. Like the guy getting crapped on in the hammock of it's not even necessarily that people were saying no, but he didn't have the means to make it happen. Like his economic situation was telling him no up until that point.
And they interviewed the chicks and like, yeah, we don't care. It's just he's paying us a shit ton of money. Just shit on him. Who cares?
Kyle, what do you think is the socialization that leads to poop in mouth?
I mean, it's got to be something else in mouth first. So there's probably just some kid who's like, wow, I love chocolate pudding except for the taste. And then it just takes off from there.
What if his parents, when he was like a small child, they made him eat like baby food for too long, like string peas or like baby mashed up carrots? And just like when he got older, he's like, "Oh, I just miss the feeling of being a child, being force fed baby mush food. I guess I can have this lady shit on my mouth to recreate it."
It's a hell of a leap there, though.
I'm just spitballing here.
We're just throwing out hypotheses.
It's the White Claw doing all the talking, okay? The Mango Islander White Claw makes me yearn for a Duke in my mouth. I just
So even if I weren't doing sober October right now, I still would not be drinking a White Claw.
Because you're a piece of shit who obeys laws.
I'm a piece of shit for many reasons. That's not
bet
one of
you
them.
pay taxes, you
If you're
pussy.
going to break the law, know the law.
Hey, everybody can say I'm not a man, or like, oh, you drink a White Claw, you probably have a giant pussy, or hey, guy with the White Claw, I bet you like to wrestle wieners with your asshole.
Says the guy who just said he would go into gay porn if both of his grandparents were dead.
There
I said
ain't
it was a
no
thought. I didn't
gauze in your jaws when you're drinking claws.
Oh, are we rhyming?
You want to know the holiday sponsor of White Claws? It's the Easter Bunny because he fucks,
That's gross.
not Santa. I know
I
what you were
still
thinking,
say
you pussy.
if you want some alcohol with low calories, just do a shot of tequila like a fucking adult. That is all I'm saying.
I'm not opposed to that.
Just if shots of tequila came in a can, I would be a different person.
It's wine in a can. We're not saying he doesn't have great ideas.
Tequila in a
No.
can.
Why?
It was a Always Sunny reference.
I'm a few seasons behind.
And I'm inventing things.
I farted. I didn't know. Oh man, I should have farted in the mic. What was I thinking? Like your mom's house with Tom Segura and Christina Pizzinski, they have the fart
Abort
mic.
home start.
They have the fart mic. I feel like they really revolutionized the podcast scene by instituting the fart mic.
Create fart book.
Yeah, that's crazy. They got sponsored by McDonald's, and then
You're
McDonald's.
shitting me right now, then.
No, the Your Mom's House podcast was sponsored by McDonald's. McDonald's listened to none of their 400 previous episodes. They had one episode, and they had like the fucking 4-stroke guy, or whatever, like piss on me, beat me, try it out, or whatever. But anyways, they had one episode, and then the McDonald's dude calls them back like, "Not in our wildest dreams did we imagine you had content so anti-McDonald's."
Oh, I thought you meant that McDonald's sponsored the fart mic.
No, they sponsored the whole podcast. But then after one episode of them being sponsoring the podcast, they like give us back our money. Right now, don't ever talk about McDonald's ever again. Like, you guys are fucking disgusting. I was like, wow, McDonald's, good research you guys did there.
That is our goal with this podcast, right? Just get enough people so that we can get Dollar Shave Club and
You're the food.
what's the meals delivery?
It's
the
not Blue Apron.
Blue
anymore.
Apron?
I think Blue Apron's down for the count. It's a like Eat Fresh or something. Hey, if you're a food guy company, if you're a company full of food guys, and you need some good advertise, like listen to the charismatic advertising.
This podcast sponsored by Freshington's. It's the exact same meal kit delivery service you've heard on every other podcast you've listened to this week.
Except
So,
for
if you are listening to this and enjoy refined gentlemen who like to use coarse language, talk about just ridiculous shit, tell a friend so that we can get enough people to, get sponsored and get this free shit.
yeah, we don't have a Patreon yet, so we just accept mostly sexual favors.
Just throw nickels at whatever this sound is coming out of, and we will get that money.
That's not.
It's called the Cash App, thank you.
Well, I am running out of rabbits.
Rabbit trails, rabbit.
No, you
I'm
guys
not
don't
following.
have pet rabbits that you put in your pants and like punch into your boner?
I do not.
Oh. That's what I need this podcast to get sponsored so I can afford more rabbits that punch into my hard, erect penis.
I'm a visual learner, so thank you for that thing that I can never unsee in my mind.
I'm a real, you know what it's like to be a real visual speaker. You used to be in the pulpit.
I did indeed. I used to work in ministry despite my many F-bombs that was actually one of my anxieties whenever I would get up there. I would put like probably 10 to 20 hours prep into every like hour sermon or whatever. The entire time, every second of that hour in the back of my head was like, don't curse, don't curse, don't curse, don't curse, don't curse.
You've said a word of curse. Jesus is angry.
Which is a point of contention for me because everyone makes it that like 10 commandments, like thou shalt not take the Lord thy God's name in vain. People think it means like, oh, you can't stub your toe and say like, ah, Jesus. Of like, that is bullshit. The entire thing of that entire
Yeah,
commandment says thou shalt not take the name like of, follower of God, Christian, call it whatever. Like, don't take that name vainly, like lightly. Just
Yeah.
basically don't say you're about God and then be a fucking twat.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I love Jesus, but you're a real cunt.
It's like
So
there's other parts of the Bible that
basically
talk
you
about
can
like
say-
just be wise about your language. Don't like be so offensive that people think you're a dickbag.
Or just
But
every
that
time you
commandment has
say
nothing
"God
to do
damn
with
it," you
cursing.
just gotta mean it every time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
goddamn White Claws.
That guy I saw out the lake
There
the
ain't
other
no
day.
pause because I am drinking claws and I have hands.
I saw this duck on the lake yesterday, the lake across from our house, and it was raping another duck. I was like, God damn that duck. I was talking about the duck being raped. It wouldn't have been such a prude in the first place. It wouldn't have been raped. So goddamn prudes, Everybody should just be a slut, is the point I'm trying to make here.
We're trying to get sponsors, not end up as like a Me Too story.
Hey, I'm
For
supposed
ducks.
to be. You guys are like the voice of reason. I'm like, you guys are. If we're to rate our scale of talk here on like we had like a Cosby scale. Like I'm closer to the Cosby. You guys are closer to like the Cosby not. You guys are not Cosby.
I'll take that
I
as a
don't know if
compliment.
I should thank you for that, so I won't.
Does that mean people are going to love you for like 20, 30 years and then later we find out there's a like rape thing going on?
Have you guys had some rape?
Dude, like all throughout my childhood, my parents like taped the Cosby Show off of TV. Like they didn't buy VHSs because like fuck that, we were cheap as shit. But they would tape over everything. So there was like 7 seasons or however much of the show, every episode taped. Still haven't broached the topic with my parents of like what the fuck just went down with Bill Cosby.
It's a goddamn tragedy. He taught all these people how to just love their families and then to love strangers.
Consensually. He left out a key part of his teachings.
There's how you love strangers on television and how you love strangers behind closed doors. That's the Cosby lesson.
Which for everyone trigger happy to get irritated. Consensually. In all cases, even behind closed doors.
He's probably the most prolific serial rapist of our, like, I don't know anybody that raped more than 50 women and got away with it for, that long. Interesting
I
fella.
hope not.
Like, what in Cosby, like, I wonder what happened to him when he was a kid. Like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to become one of the cleanest, most famous influential comics of all time. But I guess I have to rape a bunch of women also while I'm doing that. Turn that off. Growing up on a cattle farm in Kansas and, and all the constructive environment that happened there. You said you had something specifically you wanted to bring up about this.
Well, it brought up something from, because I used to be a teacher, and so we had to take developmental psych and child psych for part of our studies. Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, like, when that was first put forward to me, it just kind of struck me how a lot of people can't move past the other steps, but it's, well, for those of you not familiar, Maslow's hierarchy of basically your needs as a human for kind of just like fulfillment. So at the bottom level of this pyramid is just physiological needs. Like, do you have food? Do you have shelter? Do you have these basic things? Beyond that, there's safety things like personal security, employment, resources, health, of not just like the physical safety of like, oh, am I going to get shot or whatever, but like you just feel safe in the environment you're in. And then if you have your needs, physiological needs met, you're safe, then like love and belonging becomes the next tier of the hierarchy where do you have friendships? Do you have family? Do you have, could be blood family, could be people call it like found family of just like that belonging and community.
It's a hell of a step right there.
Yeah. And I kind of want to back up to a little bit over these and go into more detail, but above the love and belonging is the esteem, just like the respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength of just kind of like all that stuff. Very tippy top of the pyramid is self-actualization, like your desire and ability to become the most you can be of like. So we have all these things, and when we're talking about socialization of just, I didn't realize how fucked up I was until someone put this in front of me, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm, a college student from a white Anglo-Saxon, like middle class, like pretty well-to-do family. Like in theory, that sets you up to have all of these things, but I felt stalled, and I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of people who just get stalled. And you even said at the love and belonging one, like, oh, that's a big one. Like, a lot of us don't even make it to there. Like, how are we going to self-actualize, like, if we're trying to put the top keystone of the pyramid on these shitty, broken foundations, and we might not even have one of these layers of, like, I don't have self-esteem or self-respect. Like, that is not something I have.
Well, I started at self-actualization, so I didn't have to worry. I just started at the top. I don't have to worry about all those other bullshit steps. like fulfilling myself or being loved. I've realized myself. I feel like I've decided. When I was on the submarine, I had a lot of hours, like just no internet, no phone, no. I had like 130 other dudes that were fucking assholes that I knew everything about. Sometimes you just like. you're off watch, you don't have any maintenance left to do, you could be sleeping, or you're just like sitting in the engine room just thinking like, what the fuck am I doing here? I could kill everybody on board right now if I like took a bunch of bottles of ammonia and like ruptured them in the fan room, and like, you know, that would kill everybody in seconds. But you don't do that.
Well, that's kind of to my point too of like if we're trying to strive for these things like above the layers where we have shitty or missing foundations, like if we're trying to go for self-actualization off the bat when we're missing key parts of the hierarchy of like how effectively can we do that? Cuz yeah, like we can strive for self-actualization, but it's the same kind of principle of like okay, well, your job is to split this boulder to cut this trail. Like, yeah, you can get there eventually with a pickaxe, but holy shit, would dynamite be helpful
Yeah, man.
if we're just missing that key tool in these shattered layers in between?
It's just unfortunate that my realizing love outside of like my, because I have a great family. I couldn't ask for a better family. My family's great, but like my romantic relationships outside of that. I mean, because I had a lot of romantic relationships inside my family. I'm from being from
It
Kansas.
was Kansas.
No, I kid, but they were. Some people would use the word toxic. I don't know if I would use that word, but they're definitely probably not healthy. But then it's just interesting the different perspectives. Like I've lived all over the world, and I've lived in every corner of the United States. Just the different perspectives when it comes to. Well, I have this one friend, and he's just all about. He just couldn't wait to get a good job, to like meet a good woman. He can't. He's like would fantasize about having kids and like raising these kids, and like he was like in 30 or so at the time. I was probably 28 like the last time we talked about this, and I'm just like, man, I don't want kids ever. I like he has like this great big like American dream of like suburban like house, like wife and kids, and he has like a sweet ass Camaro, that he like works on in the garage while he drinks a beer, and like his wife is like wearing an apron and like cooking shit, and the kids are like doing their homework or like playing sports. He has like this like he wants that, that's what he lives his life for. That's what he strives for. And then in my opinion is like, man, that it couldn't. I'd rather kill myself, than like be like striving for some like the standard American mold. And he didn't have that when he was a kid, so that's probably, I speculate, that's why he wants something like that. He wants to have a family to like raise him. Like, if I got to raise my kids my way, I would do it this way, and then my kids would be way better than I turned out because my parents did a poor job or didn't have all the same opportunities, or it's just like the quality of life I had growing up is far different than like what my parents had, and yeah, it's just crazy that they raised me, but their socialization process was far different than mine, But yet, I'm a lot like my father in a lot of ways, and I'm like way different than him in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, we're never escaping becoming our parents in some aspects. Usually the aspects that we fucking hate about them.
Yeah. But one thing one good quality I picked up from my father was just like the say what you think and don't give a fuck kind of attitude, And I'm supremely thankful for having that point of view to just like be yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely different socializing in a city context and rural context. Because, like, city context, there's so much more to be exposed to.
Mm.
But at the same time, you don't get the depth of a lot of the, like, there will be different cultures, there will be different kind of people, different, like, everythings. So you'll, like, get exposed to it. But unless you're spending time, like, significant time with those different things. You don't get as in depth like the kind of farming culture and the kind of Midwestern, pretty much, I'm assuming white, like
Oh yeah,
basically all white, yeah.
pretty much all whiteys. Bunch of
But like
rednecks.
you get so deep into that part of the culture and that part of the culture becomes part of you, whereas like in socializing in the city context, because I grew up in Vegas,
Yeah.
like you'll be exposed to that stuff, but pretty much most of everything I hung around was like white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant
Yeah.
shit.
Well, dude, when I moved to Phoenix when I was 19 to go to music school, it was such a culture shock for me. I lived in Topeka for like a little bit when I was 18 after I graduated high school. But yeah, it's a population like 300,000 people. It's a shit, like it's crime-ridden, poor. There's like nothing there, you know. Besides, there's like a Goodyear plant there where they make tires. There's like Reese's Food where they make potato salad, and then some other distribution shits. One time, Topeka actually changed its name to Google, Kansas for one day legally because Google was talking about putting like a data center there or some like high speed internet facility. And all these cities were bidding on it. So Topeka, Kansas was like, hey, guess what? To have you put your shit here, we'll legally change our name for one day from Topeka, Kansas to Google, Kansas. If you'll please just put your shit here. So Topeka did it, and then afterwards Google's like, nah, Kansas is fucking bunch of full of idiot rednecks that don't know anything about computer science. We could build our data center there, then have nobody to work at it. So we're not going to do that.
And even like socializing people in different regions, because you're mentioning like Google not wanting to go to like redneck hick whatever
Yeah.
area of. I was just actually back on the East Coast, and it even depends like areas of there's obviously culture and race and these other things, but even just geographic areas, you could have that stuff in common with other people. And then I was back east and then realized like, wow, we have very little in common when it comes to certain things with people back east.
Oh
And
yeah, man.
although I will say, to Baltimore and Maryland's credit, of my old man was from New York, and I have family all over the East Coast. Like, but the Upper East Coast, I will say, I like Maryland a lot better than the rest of the East Coast. It was a
Yeah.
lot more kind of the things that I love about the West Coast, of like the more relaxed, chill kind of vibes, and the fact that I'm describing it as chill, kind of like shows my West Coastness.
Yeah.
So like we're at this bar with some like day trading bros. Like they're just at this bar at 2 in the afternoon on a lunch break.
investment banker.
Yeah. Like these guys, and then they end up drinking with us, and then they just look at their watches, look at each other like, yeah, fuck it, we're not going back to the office today.
Yeah.
But like we're having a conversation, there's some other chick there, and something I didn't realize about Maryland was like it had a spotted history with the Civil War, because like half the state was north, half the state was
Yeah.
south, and like whatever. And our bartender was black, and like we're saying something, I forget how it even came up, but I was describing how I was looking for jobs, and then recruiters asked if I was willing to relocate, if so where. And I was saying that I had a hard time trying to phrase like, I want to go anywhere, or I would be willing to go anywhere that they don't use the hard R. And everyone had a good laugh. Like me, Alex, the investment bankers, the black bartender.
Yeah.
Then there's this blonde chick in the corner who she was definitely on the south side of the Civil War. Or she like laughs a little bit, and then she's like, wait, what do you mean hard R? And then everyone just quietly shuts up, looks at her, looks at the black bartender, looks at her, and then looks at the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, different backgrounds. We all got socialized very differently. Every person in this fucking room.
Oh, no doubt, dude. It's interesting because you know, during the Civil War, whenever Kansas became a state, it was a Union state. It wasn't because necessarily the state was against slavery. They were against, if they would became a Confederate state and fully legalized slavery, then all these Confederate plantations would have moved in and then priced out all the the locals, you know. So like, man, if we legalize slavery, all these plantations are gonna come in and they're gonna gentrify the fucking place with their plantations, and then all this poor fucking Kansas white trash people.
Hard to keep up with free labor.
Yeah, man. So they're like, no, we're gonna become a union state. Slavery's illegal. we still hate black people, but
Oh yeah, like so did. I mean, most of the Union troops. If everyone likes to think it's this racial thing, like yeah, crusading for justice. Of like, dude, if you talked to a Civil War just soldier from the North, they would have been the most racist pieces of shit by today's standards.
yeah, man. And
But for their time, they were progressive.
yeah, they're fighting a good fight. They're like, yeah, I suppose we could let these animals out of the cage, you know.
They're still animals. They still can't vote. Fuck
hey,
that.
hey, we can let them not be whipped and work, but we can just throw them in all these shitty communities and not educate them and just be racist to them for like the next 120 years.
Which I mean, it does give me like a lot of optimism and hope for the future of because I was like relatively recently of there's still a handful of people alive today who were like remember the Civil War and were
Yeah.
fucking there. And
Wait,
like the
that were in the
standards
Civil War. No, that was like 1860. There's no way
well,
there's still
their
somebody alive.
grandparent or their parents at least.
They got our grandparents probably have firsthand accounts like told to them from the Civil War. From
Yeah,
their
like
grandparents.
parents and grandparents were like yeah, so grandparents. Yeah, I forgot how math worked for a second, but what I was saying is it gives me optimism because how far we've come since then in like a generation and like I was saying of the for their time the North was progressive of they would be the most
Yeah.
racist pieces of shit by today's standards, but for then it was good. And even
Relatively.
like thinking of one generation gap from my dad to me, like he was progressive as fuck back in the day because he was socialized back to our like kind of core theme.
Yep.
Socialized, very metropolitan, New York. You're exposed to like a little bit of everything. And then he was fine with black people. Like he had no issue. And then he went into the service with people who were from the South who did not have similar socialization patterns. And then,
Things get kind of intense sometimes.
except like, it is weird because it's less so about color and kind of more so about like being from New York of like there's definitely oh that's the Irish part, that's the Italian part, that's the Jewish part. Like it's not a melting pot of I'm stealing this analogy from somewhere that I forget. I can't claim originality, but it's like New York isn't some big melting pot. It's just like oh all the Chinese pots hang out over there. They talk shit about the Jamaican pots 2 blocks down. Those Jamaican
Oh, man.
pots, but which is sorry I'm getting a little off the point. For his day, my dad was super progressive. Like he was telling me a story about how a couple of the redneck hillbillies were trying to pick on this black guy, picked a fight, and it was my dad and this guy versus like 4 or 5 of these hicks, and alcohol was involved. So my dad said he got one really good, and he doesn't remember. He wasn't coordinated enough. He turns around, and apparently the black guy like knew some kind of martial arts or something, and he just like fucked up all these dudes. So my dad, for his day, progressive, like fighting with
Yeah.
this black guy against these bigots. He was progressive for his day. To this day, like I swear to Christ, whenever I'm driving with him, if someone makes a dickbag move in traffic, he'll be like, "Look over there, are they Oriental?" I'm like, we stopped calling them that after Nom A B. I'm not looking if they're fucking Asian because of your racist stereotypes on driving. For his day, he was progressive, so I'm excited to see like in a couple generations of like obviously you don't want kids. I might have someone at some point if I can somehow con a girl into loving me at some point, but like
Good luck with that.
what stories will my grandkids potentially tell about like oh yeah, for his day, Grandpa Murphy was solid, but holy shit.
Yeah, he used to drive his car without a computer and, joke about racism. Yeah, now we're not even allowed to joke about racism.
Oh, we can do it. We'll just hopefully end up as successful as Dave Chappelle to where
Well, and what sucks is like you can't be a white person and joke about racism because white privilege. You never. I lived in Guam and I got punched in the mouth one time for being a cracker. Though there's levels to it. I experienced a very mild form of racism. Like I didn't care that this 90-pound Chamorro like punched me in the face. I was really drunk and I just came out of a whorehouse. Like I had no testosterone left in my body. I was not angry. I was super drunk and just drained, and I wanted to walk home. He felt like he needed to tell me I was white and something was wrong with me, and he had to punch me in the face. and I just walked past him and went home, you know. But that's one level, and that's not even near the level of what was that one guy? What was that guy's name? Oh yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. when he got shot in his brains.
Oh, thought you were about to talk about Juicy Sommelier.
No, what a dummy. What a fucking idiot.
To be clear, we're talking about Jesse Smollett being an idiot, not Martin Luther King. We're very
Yeah.
pro Martin Luther King in
Yeah.
these parts.
Martin Luther King is a great man. Jesse Smollett is a fucking idiot. What
Well,
a
that's the funny
dummy.
thing. For as much as we fight about race and stuff, and by we I mean people, not us. Neither of us two gives a shit about race. And if Kyle was still awake, I don't think he would care
No,
either.
Kyle is the biggest racist I've ever met. Dude, you want to meet somebody that hates Jews? Talk to Kyle. No, I made that up. He's gonna love that.
For all of the conflict about race is probably a better way to say it. That's not what got Martin Luther King killed. As soon as he spoke out against the military industrial complex and said,
Oh yeah, man.
we have no business in Vietnam fighting for the rights of these people that we're not even giving our own citizens, we have no military business there. That's what got him killed.
He also was the day he was killed. Wasn't he also talking about a universal basic income in that speech? I think.
Not. I can't confirm.
Well,
or deny, I
that
have
was
no
one of
idea.
his ideas. I don't know if. Well, that was definitely one of the ideas he was talking about. Was he had a different name for it, but it was universal basic income.
Hmm.
But that would have been a huge help for like the African American communities that were being like hugely oppressed back then. They'd be like, hey, here's some money from the government that so you guys can actually like live and not resort to crime and. Did you watch that show Snowfall that me and Daniel were talking about?
Don't think so.
It was on FX. It was it's all about like this young kid in Compton that like he's just like this smart kid, but he's like from the hood and somehow or another he gets caught up in like selling crack for the CIA so they can like launder money or like raise money for like the Nicaraguans or whatever to.
Sounds like the fucking CIA.
Yeah, so it's not based on a true story, but it's like kind of like it's like historically like that shit was going on, you know. So it's kind of like
Historical fiction.
yeah, because the CIA really was, well, from what I understand, like funneling drugs into the United States and then having Americans sell those drugs and then sending that money and weapons back to like countries in like Central America and shit, so they could have civil wars and so we could have a stake in the winning party and control our resources in their government and shit. Whatever deep state bullshit was going on, but that's what the show's like about. And it's a really interesting show. It's a really well done show. Snowfall. And it's funny, the main character he has this uncle named Jerome. He's like this big jacked black dude with jerry curls. It's like in the 80s. He's like, "What's up, nephew?" You know, it's like, dude, it's like whenever he's talking, he's like all business. He's like my favorite character because he's like this big ass hood dude, and he just does not give a fuck, and he's just real as fuck. Whenever Franklin's around, he's like, "What's up, my nephew?" And this in the beginning, he's like just letting Franklin like sell weed with him, and then Franklin gets like this coke hookup. He's like, "Hey man, like I'm gonna let you know I got your back if you're gonna get into this, but shit's gonna get real fast. Like the cocaine game, like you're gonna deal with like hardened criminals and fucked up people, and dude, it's such a fucking crazy show. It's bananas."
And to like kind of tie it, I'm very like linear, kind of like PowerPoint outline type of thinker of like relating back to our main topic of like race is obviously part of the socialization, and then like uh when we were talking about like the different types of exposure and different things of
Yeah, the neighborhood you grow up in, the community.
and then because you brought up white privilege and how we as white privileged men can't talk about it, like one of the things that stuck with me the most on like race discussions was because I used to work in a church, and there's this really good preacher in church down in Texas, and they take 3 to 4 weeks out of every year because there's 52 weeks on every
Yeah.
year. So they take 3 to 4 of them because they live in this part of DFW of Dallas Fort Worth, and it's like super kind of segregated, but not segregated, like because there's black parts to it, there's white parts to it, and they're very different.
Yeah.
And so their church takes 3 to 4 weeks out of every year to talk about like race relations. What does it mean to, follow God in the context of us like all being together,
Yeah.
being not saying like, oh, I don't see color because I'm a moron and don't acknowledge these different parts of our socialization that make us who we are.
Yeah,
But
it's not
one of
racist.
those things that stuck out from that for me was the white preacher, because they have like a panel of nice fart, by the way.
Thank you.
They have a panel of like white preacher and the black preachers in the church, and then the white preacher just goes, "Yeah, if you treat people without dignity, they will act undignified."
Weird.
So part of the socialization, like in the context they brought it up was related to race, but it doesn't have to be. You can be, in Northern Ireland of whites on whites, same thing. Treat someone without dignity, we're gonna act undignified. That's how you get pipe bombs.
Yeah.
We taught the world how to be terrorists. Go Irish. All right.
Well, it's still in 2019. Racism is like still a polarizing thing in the United States, which most of the people are like, how is this still a problem? Like we still hate people because they're a different color than us, but dude, it's still like white supremacy is still a huge thing in the United States. Like
Yeah, somehow.
I don't understand,
Tiki torches and shit.
dude.
Oh, did
That
I tell you
big-
about the Colombian house party me and Phil crashed?
No.
So our buddy Kirby's wedding, he was the JC on that sub that I was telling you about, who came out like not okay from his sub experience. Like he's okay now, but for like a year or two after he got out, he was
Yeah.
like not okay as a person and fucking hated it.
Yeah.
But he found a woman to love him, and he got married back in April.
Mhm.
So Phil, who's probably going to make an appearance on this podcast at some point, Phil and our other college buddy Mike go back because we were all college buddies with Kirby. And the wedding's a lot of fun. We have a great time. And then our plan is to go tour a bunch of breweries over on the East Coast in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And on our first tour, there's this big group of Colombians, and they're a lot of fun. They're getting rowdy, we're getting rowdy, everyone's having a good time. Then they're like, "Oh, come on over, it's Camilo's birthday." So we're like, "Yeah, hell yeah, let's go." And then on our way to pick stuff up at the liquor store, on the way to go over to like, this could turn out like super bad. Like, if any of these dudes are significantly bigger than us or armed, we have to get the fuck out of there. Of like, we want stories, but we don't want those kind of stories. But it ended up being like the time of our lives. We had fucking so much fun with these Colombians.
Hell yeah.
Colombian women, dude. Colombian women.
They're spicy. Muy caliente.
Si, senor.
Me gusta mucho.
Anyways, I forgot how we got on that tangent.
Yeah, we're talking about experiencing other cultures, becoming socialized with more than just what we were used to.
Yeah, we're
Growing
well off
up.
the socialization track. It kind of went like a lot racial for a while there.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Us crackers like to tell everybody how enlightened we are when it comes to race relations. Hey, I'm so much not a racist. I have to defend. Like white people have to defend well, there's like this thing. Like if you defend yourself too much. Yeah, let's get away from this subject.
Yeah, we're gonna get in trouble. At some point, we're gonna have a job interview. Is it true in 2019 you were on this podcast? Like, motherfucker.
No, it's all alleged. It was allegedly. None of it's true.
So obviously, race part of socialization, and then the Maslow's hierarchy of like where you stand on that. Like, I'm not fully convinced. A lot of us in the world feel that safety in that pyramid of like, yeah, just because bullets aren't flying overhead. Of like, if you walk in and say the wrong thing, you're gonna get your ass whooped. So you're scared to say the wrong thing for the rest of your fucking life.
That and some social issues where conservatives will feel super strongly one way about like gun control, and like if you try to, like, some liberal hippie tries to tell some conservative wacko that, hey, you need to give away all your semi-auto, like high capacity, like large caliber weapons. Like, you need to give all those up because all you do is like go shoot watermelons and tannerite with it or whatever, and you don't need those. And I'm gonna tell you what you can or can't have, and then we're all gonna be safer. You know, it's funny the people that think that all guns should just be taken away. Like, you realize that our nation is literally founded on uh, armed insurrection against an oppressive, like, tyrannical government to, like, give ourselves freedom.
Here is my beef with like super duper Second Amendment people. And I love the Second Amendment and I love guns. I have several. But the thing is, if you're going to take that mindset where, well, the Second Amendment is so that you can arm the populace so that the government can't be oppressive, if you're going to go that route, the people need equal access to the same arms that the government has.
So, like, nuclear
Would
weapons?
you trust me with a Tomahawk missile in my backyard?
No.
No, I wouldn't either, because I'm an asshole. And if someone cuts me off in traffic and I learn their address, guess who's pushing that fucking button? So there's limits and rules because the government saw the same thing of like, yeah, we shouldn't trust Murph with a Tomahawk missile, so he can't have access to that. He can't have access to, class 3, class 2, like whatever classifications they make for weapons of like the fully auto, like without special permits that you have to be ex-military and pay, tens of thousands of dollars for these permits. Like, we don't have access to the same arms that the military does. So if the military as a branch and extension of the government is going to come in and do something oppressive of like, okay, martial law, like Reno is now some battleground for whatever fucking, what was that movie in the 80s? Something Dawn?
Red Dawn?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this is Red Dawn time of like martial law, whatever of, yeah, we'll have some arms, but if it's like citizens versus organized military, they have those Tomahawk missiles. If we get
Yeah.
together in some
We're
fucking
fucked.
compound, like,
Yeah.
so that's my beef with Second Amendment people because they think it means that you can stand up to the government, and we can't because if Second Amendment means what people are interpreting it as, ability to stand up to the government, we do not have those rights. We're already restricting access to arms. So the degree to which we restrict that is what everyone's fighting about, not whether people can have arms, period, at all. It's this, this sliding scale of, okay, do we draw the line at Tomahawk missiles? Do we draw the line at, belt-fed machine guns? Do we draw the line at, and then this is probably where I would fall on one side of the line of like, I don't give a shit how big the clip is in your rifle of like, I don't think restricting that is going to necessarily
out the yang.
magazine capacity. So like, I don't see a need for it. I will never buy a weapon with more than, I think my hunting rifle holds 6 rounds. But
I have a 100-round double drum magazine from one of my LWRC M6. I have like 10 or 12 30-round mags for it.
so like, I don't think I will need a bigger magazine size than the ones I have. But at the same time, I'm like, making a law against you having your
Yeah, man, don't
size be whatever it
abdicate my
is.
freedom.
I don't think it'll stop any shootings because there's a bigger problem in America besides the gun
root cause
capacity.
analysis, man. Don't take away. I'm not abdicating my freedoms to make other people feel safe because all these fucking people have mental illness or they're on some kind of antidepressant or antipsychotic medication, and then they're getting guns from their friends or family, or they're even on like watch lists. I don't understand why somebody can just go into a store and be like, "Hey, I need an AR-15 platform like rifle today. I need 1,000 rounds and I need a bunch of magazines for it. I need that all today." I feel like if you're buying any gun, you should have like a few days like waiting list. Like, hey, even like a fucking like 22 long rifle, like single shot, like bolt action rifle. Like, yeah, you go in, you pick it out, you buy it. 10 days later, you get to come pick it up because 10 days, you know, you're not gonna do anything rash. Like, if you're going on a hunting trip or some shit, like, you should have some fucking forethought going into it. Like, if there's ever a point where you need like a gun in less than like a few minutes, like, holy fuck, I need a gun right now. I need all kinds of, like, what's going on, you know? Because if the government's being toppled and we're being attacked, you're not going to be purchasing anything. You're going to be finding what you need, you're going to be taking it, and you're going to be using it, you know? Don't take
So-
my freedom.
Tying back to our main topic of socialization, we've touched on race clearly, we've touched on politics that go into our socialization process.
Well, we're describing
But,
how we are socialized. You know.
Something that did stick out to me because there was some mass shooting, and forgive me for not remembering which one because there's one every goddamn week. But during that race conversation that church that I really respect and like was having, of one of the black preachers got up because all these guys are super educated. Of like my program for my grad degree was 96 credits of grad work, which is beyond, like, your undergrad is usually around 120 credits.
Yeah.
One grad credit is usually worth it, like time-wise and investment-wise and reading. Like, it's about twice the work that an undergrad credit is.
Yeah.
And these guys are more educated than I have been. Of like, these are some smart motherfuckers. So one of the black preachers with this education and intelligence gets up and he says, like, an important part that a lot of times we don't talk about in gun control and like what background, what kind of socialization you have. A lot of the people most affected by gun violence have the smallest voice in the debate. Like, absolutely. I love hunting. I love the Second Amendment, all that shit. Gun violence hasn't really affected my life all that much, but it's people like you and me who have the biggest voice in this thing. And the NRA, which I have a lot of beef with that organization for a lot of reasons, like, has this huge political power.
Yeah, there's fucking
And
lobbyists,
most of the
man.
members of the NRA and the people leading this movement have very little impact on their lives from gun violence. Whereas you go to, like, Chicago, Chirac, as a lot
Yeah.
of people call it, like,
Yeah, man.
those people are in the shit every day affected by
Strictest
gun
gun
violence.
laws in the United States.
Those types of people have a very small voice in this. And then how that socializes you and grow, like, as you're growing up, of kind of gives you a sense of entitlement. Can most of the time has a really negative connotation, but just a lot of times if you're raised in a more affluent, when whiter cultures tend to be more affluent, just on the average.
Yeah, because we're smarter and better.
Fuck you. The list of people that I can actually send this podcast to has officially dropped to 0 now. But people grow up with a sense of entitlement in those cultures and backgrounds in their socialization, not in terms of like, oh, I'm just better than everyone and I deserve things, of just, there's this thing that is not communicated a lot. And Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in Outliers at one point, of the sense of entitlement, not in like a negative connotation, but just like, some people
Recognize
are
it.
never told your opinion matters. If you want something, ask for yourself and stick up for yourself. That doesn't happen in a lot of cultures. Like, when they were doing that cultural study that Gladwell talks about, like, that was in some people's backgrounds, and it wasn't racial in theirs, and it wasn't like geographic or any of these regions that we've talked about. It was more tend to do with like affluence of how wealthy your family was when you were being socialized, of like the entitlement, not in the negative sense, just like, oh, hey, I'm a person with value and I want this thing. How can we make this thing happen? Of like going forth and being active and trying to make that process happen was very unique to affluent backgrounds. Whereas, like, if you were from a poorer background, or just like, hey man, life sucks. If you get lemons, fucking deal.
I'm gonna drink Kyle's glass of wine. No, not the.
White Claw.
Is that White Claw open?
Yeah, it is.
Holy shit!
Well, there's White Claw and there's wine.
I guess I'm gonna drink both of these. I don't like to waste alcohol in my house.
You're drinking for 2 now, because I wish I could drink right now.
I want to drink that wine
November
first.
1st, game on.
I've had enough fucking White Claw tonight. I want this red wine. This Tizona. Whatever the fuck been left over here. He was supposed to be a part of this, and he chickened out.
Yeah, I went to go get snacks, and then I pull up in the driveway, and he's like bolting out the front door. I'm like, "What'd you do to Ben?"
I think he came to realization that we're going to record his thoughts. And then he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, he's gonna be fine in that job interview years from now. Like, were you in this podcast in 2019? No.
Well, you see, I'm planning on being a professional comedian. So this is just my brand, you know. I'm just more solidifying my brand.
So yeah, I don't really have much more. I would just be talking to talk, but socialization is just fascinating to me, the different ways that we all get socialized, and you don't necessarily know when you're talking to someone and interacting and say they're being a shithead at work. Like, well, what context were they socialized in? Was it like normal of probably need to protect the names of the innocent for this podcast? Let's call this individual Milk Dud that both of us have worked with.
Milky
He was
boy.
very protected by his parents for a very long time, probably until the moment we met him. And he did not know how the world worked, and you'd want to get pissed at him, and you still would be, but at the same time you were like,
It's
he
not all his
doesn't
fault,
know
yeah.
any better.
It was how
But
he
that
was
doesn't
raised.
mean I don't need him to not suck right now.
Yeah. Well, especially being in the military, you know, there's a point in time where I had like my division, and I had like these young guys were coming in, and like I never had anybody that was like extremely shitty that was in my division, but as a goof, like my engineering department master chief like once made me like train this dude from another division that was a complete piece of shit. He was such a fucking idiot fuck, you know, but they thought it was fun just to make me like make him my problem. Like, hey, you're gonna turn this guy around, and like that's impossible. He's fucking retarded, you know. I can't polish this fucking turd. He ended up getting kicked out of the military because he lied about his psych evaluation or some shit, and then finally like, I got you, fucker, you're out. Like you're a piece of shit. Like, and he was fucking garbage.
Yeah, because I think it's important to have empathy for the different, socializations that everyone's have. But empathy doesn't necessarily mean enabling and giving excuses.
So this guy was a piece of shit. There were other guys that were just like weird and were socialized. Like this dude, he would tell stories about he was a military brat, and like they would move all the time and have rental cars all the time. And one time, him and his sister were sitting in the back seat of this rental car with their dad, and the sister was sick, and she like it was his younger sister, and she just like threw up all over my shipmate, you know, when they were like young kids. And he's like, God, fucking so-and-so sister, like, threw up all over me. And the dad's like, shut the fuck up and just sit down. Like, we'll be to where we're going in, like, an hour. Just sit there and don't move.
Holy shit.
So he had to, like, sit in the backseat of this car for, like, an hour, just, like, covered in, like, his sister's vomit. And it just smelled bad, and his dad just didn't give a shit, you know? And that was just one of the 100 stories. And this guy was fucking crazy, you know? He would, like, get mad sometimes, like, punch the door, like, next to him, like, in maneuvering when he was, like, operating like the steam plant throttles for like the fucking submarine. Like he was really smart. He was great at his job. He cared a lot, but sometimes like his goal was to do 20 years in the Navy, like get his pension, like retire, and then live in a shack and just have internet and play video games all day and like not talk to anybody ever. You know, he had no he like liked women. He was like into women, except for he refused to talk to or associate with them. He's like, yeah, I'm into chicks, but I don't ever want to like talk to one or like be in a relationship with one because
So he's more like asexual.
yeah, but it's weird because he was still like, he's like, yeah, you know, like chicks are hot and stuff, but I just don't want to have like that in my life.
They are work.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a nice conversation. I suppose we can end it there, and you know, you can take this conversation and you can judge the way we're socialized and just remember, you know, we're just a couple hardworking fellas, you know, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm not racist. I'll let you, I'll just let you make that decision, listener. Fuck you. Anyways,
I still potentially have to get a job and don't want this podcast to reflect poorly. For the record, not a racist over here.
yeah, you make the decision for both of us. All right, this has been another time with the Life in God's Pocket. I guess that's what we're still going with. LIGP. Later.